Hi, everybody. My name is Angie Viscianen, and I founded a company called Leg Up Legal. We provide a prospective law student mentoring program that connects pre-law students to lawyers for mentoring, and we started hosting these weekly Zoom meetups during COVID-19 to allow people to connect with each other and get some resources that might actually help them survive this pandemic and successfully go on to law school and become practicing lawyers. And so I have been bringing on guest speakers every week who talk about different aspects of the law school admissions process, law school itself, and being a practicing lawyer. And today I have a very special guest with me. Her name is Barbara Kirby, and she is the pre-law advisor at the University of Texas at Dallas, and a close personal friend of mine. UTD is my alma mater. So she's here to talk to you today about what pre-law advisors can do for you. And I think this is a really important topic because I typically talk to all of you about career development and different aspects of being a lawyer, but the actual nuts and bolts of getting into law school is really quite hard, and it's very nuanced. And I think a lot of people who go through the admissions process go through it unprepared. So you should definitely check out if your institution has a pre-law advisor, and Barbara will tell you all of the resources that they can offer you.
Great. Thank you so much, Angie. I'm reaching over here to grab my notes so that I don't forget anything I was going to say. I'm really happy to be here today and to talk about what the law school admissions world looks like and what it looks like right now. I am, as you can see from my resume, a former attorney, although I think the attorneys who are on here will agree there is no such thing as a former attorney. You are once your brain is reformatted by law school, then you're kind of a more recovering attorney, kind of like that one day at a time. So still, even though I have a PhD and I have taught as a professor, what I've found is at the core of my being, I am still mostly, first and foremost, an attorney. I love helping people to get into law school. I was a corporate attorney for a long time, and so from that perspective, probably not the most altruistic person in the world, but as I've been back at UTD and have become a pre-law advisor, I really have come to believe that the world needs good lawyers now, probably more than ever. And so I have developed this kind of, a passion is kind of a cliche, but I really want to help people become the good lawyers that I think we need in order to change the world in so many different ways, not just, from that like policy perspective, but having good ethical attorneys in the business realm, like in the corporate world from which I came. So, that's kind of where I'm coming from now, why I'm willing to help people who are interested in going to law school, not just for my school, but anyone who might not be able to find a pre-law advisor. One of the things that I think it's important to say up front, first and foremost, is that if you are not currently in school, your university probably has a pre-law advisor who helps alumni as well. In fact, the call I was on with a student before this session was someone who graduated from UTD 4 years ago. And so don't think just because you're not at your university anymore that you can't reach out to the pre-law advisor there, because you definitely can. And, I'm going to go ahead and throw myself out there. If you can't find a pre-law advisor at the university that you go to, feel free to contact me. And I'm on LinkedIn, so you can find me. So there are a lot of people who, get into the law school admissions process and they don't go see their pre-law advisor. And I think that the main reason, we're going to throw out a word of the day, which is pejorative. I believe that advisor regarding academics has a tendency to be kind of pejorative, that it's a perfectly wonderful word, but for some reason it has a negative connotation. I think everyone has had that experience where it's like, ugh, I have to go see my advisor or I can't register for classes. I went to see my advisor and they told me I shouldn't want to be a lawyer. So remember that, pre-law advisors are very specialized, just like the universities where you have pre-health advisors who are working you through that very specialized process of getting into medical school. And so the other thing about pre-law advisors is that it's a much smaller world than you would think. So, for example, I am in the Southwest Association of Pre-Law Advisors, which is known as SWAPLA. And you'll hear people talk about APLAs. There's an association of pre-law advisors in every region of the schools. We all work together to make sure that we have the best information about law school admissions, what the law school admissions people are looking for in applications, what they want to see in letters of recommendations, what they like to see about candidates who have taken a gap. And so the other thing about it is in our pre-law advisor organizations, we have a lot of interface with the law school representatives who are in our region. And so it's a very small network. In the Southwest Association, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, I know the deans of admissions at the various schools. And so I have learned as a pre-law advisor that I really can get a lot of information about what admissions people want.
So Barbara, I've got a question about the different OPLAs. So if you're at a university and your university doesn't have a pre-law advisor, or maybe they have a pre-law advisor, but they aren't available during summers or something, can you talk to the pre-law advisors at one of the other OPLA law school or one of the other schools in your OPLA region?
Yes, what I would do in your region is I would go where Angie posted, that particular, say if you're on the Pacific Coast, go to the PC APLA website and you can through that reach out to pre-law advisors at the various universities, and you can just say, hey, I'm at a school where I don't have someone. Can you direct me, to someone in your group? And I am sure that one of the pre-law advisors, I know for us at SWAPLA, that we we used to go out on the road. And so we would visit schools that didn't have a pre-law advisor and share our information with them. So I would think you would find there is also the national organization, which is PLANC, the Pre-Law Advisors National Conference, and through their website. I'm really angry at LSAC right now because they seem to be charging for everything these days. But if I overcome that anger, they are really a good organization to reach out to as well, and not just for signing up for the packages.
I think a lot of applicants are probably also in that boat.
Also feeling that, yeah. But one of the things that's coming up that I wanted to share with everyone is that the typical LSAC forums that are, there are 7 or 8, and they are always in the major cities. Ours is in Houston. And all of the law schools would come to the LSAC forum. You would walk around. That's all going to happen virtually this fall. So you're going to have 3 opportunities to go to a virtual LSAC forum and visit with and connect with law school admissions people from the various schools. And Angie's just posted the link to that. They gave us pre-law advisors a preview of what it's going to look like, and they're using a kind of convention application. So it's like a bunch of avatars walking around, and you click on the various places. There's a lot of not just the ability to visit with different law schools, but LSAC is going to offer programming. So there's going to be a pre-law 101 that you can go into that particular venue, hear what it is they have to say. And so there's going to be a lot of informational type programming that goes along with those forums.
Do you know what conference software or whatever that is that they're using with all the avatars?
You would ask me that.
Yeah, I would.
I think it's called, is it Presence? Does that ring a bell?
I don't know. There's so many right now.
I don't know.
There's been so many that have popped up over the pandemic.
It might be Handshake. I don't know. Each of us of the APLAs are having to modify what we have done in the past for students. So we used to have law fairs in our region where the law schools would come visit the campuses in person. We're taking that online for SWAPLA as well. And so if you go to the SWAPLA webpage, we will be posting the different, what we're doing is panels with the law schools that are in our region. And so we're doing about 4 to 5 law schools per visit. And so, for example, there's going to be a panel that's of North Texas law schools. It will be SMU, A&M, Texas Tech, Baylor. And so we're kind of breaking it up in that way. I would say every different region is going to be trying to do something where you'll have, for people who are alumni, this is going to be really great because typically where we've done these kinds of interfaces with the law schools, it's been in person. And now you can go to all of the different ones and you won't even have to get out of your pajamas. And I think that's great. It broadens the interactions you'll be able to have with law schools this year. So one of the questions that has come up with me a lot is, what is the application process going to look like in this cycle? Are there going to be more applicants? Are there going to be fewer applicants? Is it a good time for me to go to law school? Is it a bad time? And so just like everything these days, that's anybody's guess. But my feel about it so far is that there is going to be something of a drop in applications. And so I think that makes it a good time to apply and get in.
That's actually so interesting to hear because I know early in COVID-19, a lot of people were predicting that the next cycle would be way more competitive because a lot of people would defer from this cycle. And they thought, well, during bad economic times, a lot of people would flood into law schools. So that's actually really refreshing to hear.
Yeah. It's not what we saw in the last recession. In the last recession, there was a big drop in applications. There was a huge drop in applications. And, I think that there's so many different factors. I think the high cost of law school makes people concerned about doing it in uncertain times. For me, I think, well, in uncertain times, what better time to spend 3 years going to law school? Because the job market isn't going to be so great either.
Well, I think you kind of saw that at the beginning of the last recession. It seemed like there was a huge spike in applications before it tanked. And I think when it tanked was when people were realizing like, oh, this is going to last longer than we thought. And so I think people initially thought, I'll go wait it out in law school for 3 years. So there was a ton of applicants. And then all of a sudden there was a whole bunch of people graduating with no jobs. And then they were like, oh, whoa. This is probably not a good idea. So, so I think a lot of us have learned from that time period, from the last recession, like, hey, maybe we should be a little more conservative about that before we rush into law school. But.
Well, here's my kind of Nostradamus statement about it. Because so many of the law school admissions folk have been through the last recession, I sense a little bit of panic amongst them. They're very
Yeah.
concerned that applications are going to go way down. So here's my bit of advice number one. If you are looking to apply in this cycle, make sure you get your application in early. And by early, I mean try to do everything by the end of the year, at the latest in January. Now you see all of the different law schools and their application deadline is March 1st or February 15th or April. This is not something where you wait until the last minute, because it's not like they hold all the applications and look at them at that point, like some of the big scholarship programs. Law school applications are rolling. And so the sooner you get your application in, the better your consideration. And like I say, the thing about the panic is if law school people see that good applicant in November or December, and they're worried about whether students are going to continue to apply, hopefully what they're going to do is they're going to accept you and throw some money at you right off the bat. And that goes for the top 14 schools from this last cycle before everything went bad. My students who got the best admissions and the best money to the top 14 schools got their applications in before Christmas. And I had, one or two who had applications that they got in January, and they really had to sweat it to get their admission to one of the top schools. Whereas some of their, peers already were getting admitted and evaluating offers and so forth. So that being said, one of the, as a pre-law advisor, the first and foremost thing that I'm going to be doing with students is helping you set up your timeline. And it's the point where I have one-on-one meetings that students leave and say, wow, I feel so much better now. Because they've come in and they don't know, am I ahead? Am I behind? Where am I in the process? They might talk to some of their pre-med friends who've been working on their applications, for a year now, and they're thinking, wow, am I behind? So
when do you think, I'm sorry, Barbara,
go ahead.
I think timing is a really important issue. So when do you think students should come talk to their pre-law advisors? Is it in their junior year? Is it in their senior year? Is it before then? Like, how soon?
Yeah. I think that, I have a lot of freshmen who are very eager who come and talk to me and say, I want to go to law school, and so I want to come talk to you right now. About the only thing I can say to them then is, first and foremost, make good grades. Don't mess up your freshman year like I did, and then have to be making it up later or trying to explain to law schools about, how stupid you were when you were 18 and the dumb decisions you made. So that's the thing first and foremost is, making good grades is something that you can always do to enhance your law school application. But then when it's time to, get beyond the, what kind of organization should I be in? What should I be doing to enhance my application? Getting serious about it is your junior year. Because you have to start thinking about when you want to take the Lsat and how you're going to prepare for it. For my students who are in what I would call the current cycle, so that is people who are going to be getting their applications in this fall, before the end of December 2020, they are all working on and focused on the Lsat right now. And so if that's where you are and you haven't started thinking about the Lsat yet, you've still got time. The August test is coming up August 29th. And so that's a little bit tight. I wouldn't want to be picking up preparation starting right now for the Lsat. I think you need a couple of solid months in advance to really be prepared. But the October Lsat still fits with that goal of getting the number, getting the rest of your application together, and getting everything in by the end of the year. For students who are still in school, where that's going to be, part of your senior year, is why I've always tried to encourage students to take one of the summer LSATs. You can start preparing for it during the spring of your junior year, and then take it during the summer. And it's a test you only want to take once. But the negative implication that there used to be about taking the test more than once has long ago gone away. So students will take it multiple times. Like I say, you don't want to, but if you don't get the score that you want the first time, then it is acceptable to the law schools. They're only going to report your top score, and that's what they're going to be considering. So, however, I sure don't recommend taking it more than 3 times, and I think you ought to have a good reason to say, here's what happened at that test. Here's what I think I did wrong. Here's what I'm going to do different. And here's how I think I'm going to score this time. So time frame wise, time schedule wise, that's what's first and foremost, is when am I going to take the LSAT and how am I going to prepare for it? Then the other things on the timeline, writing your personal statement, getting your resume together, asking for letters of recommendation, all are things that once you've got your score, you can start working on getting all of those kinds of things together. Now, letters of recommendation, of course, is the kind of thing that when I get, freshmen, sophomore, juniors that I'm talking to, is telling them it's never too early to start sucking up to your professors. So you're going to need at least one academic letter of recommendation. Maybe it might be if you're not working or don't have an internship, if you're just going straight through, then you'll be getting 2 or more academic recommendations. And so you want to make sure that your professors get to know you as a person. And that's just a matter of, going up after a lecture and introducing yourself. Hey, I really enjoyed your lecture about X. Can I come see you in your office hours? You're going to have professors that you have more than one time. And so you really want to foster those relationships. It's important if you have internships or jobs to foster relationships with people. And, think about it in terms of, I know everybody hates that word networking. Back in my day, my father used to call it connections. You want to take advantage of your connections. Well, connecting is super important. And I know it's one of the things that Angie is the queen of networking, and you can learn so much from her about it. But it's important at school as well to foster relationships so that you'll have something for your application. Now, personally, based on my relationships with the law school admissions folk, the next most important thing besides your LSAT and your GPA is your personal statement. And that's really, when you get to how can a pre-law advisor help you, that I hate to see people try to go through the application process and go it alone, because there's so much great information and help out there that your pre-law advisor can do for you. And first and foremost, I'm helping people with their personal statements. I can give all of this advice about here's when you should take the LSAT, here's how to consider, how to prepare for it. But when it comes to the nuts and bolts of what I do, it is sitting down with students and saying, here is how a personal statement for law school is different from what you might write for other types of applications. They really want to know who you are as a person. Since law schools don't do interviews. Sometimes later in the application process, they might ask you for an interview. But for most of your applications, the personal statement is your only place to say, here's who I am as a person. And so it really does have to be a story about you, and it really does have to be personal. And so a pre-law advisor. Oh, and guess what? It's your first big writing sample. And lawyers are wordsmiths. So you want to make sure it's a great story about you and that it's well crafted. And so a pre-law advisor can look over for grammatical errors, spelling errors, the dreaded active versus passive voice that people seem to fall into, especially when they're writing about themselves. And so I can help you present the best story about who you are. And it isn't necessarily why I want to be a lawyer. And it also is never a repeat of your resume, because they're going to have your resume anyway. But it should be, here's who I am as a person. Here's an experience or experiences that I've gone through that were critical in turning me into the person that I am. And here is how I know that I am ready now for law school and the legal profession. So you really only get to that why I want to be a lawyer part, kind of summing it up in the end. And guess what? A lot of the law schools want you to do it in 2 pages. And so it is one of the hardest writing assignments that you'll ever have. I also help people, and your pre-law advisor can help you with your resume. It's interesting at UTD, in the School of Management, like that Angie graduated from, they do these very strict business kind of resumes where everything is loaded into 1 page. And I always look at those from my JSOM graduates and say, hey, this looks really nice, but we've got to expand it out. And isn't that good news that law schools don't really want to see just 1 page for your resume? They want to see bullets underneath your different internships and jobs and so forth that say, here's what I actually did at this particular job. And it becomes kind of a supplement to your personal statement to show who you are.
I think that's so important to note that the resume is really different for people who are trying to get into law school, because I know once you get into law school and you're actually applying to jobs for law firms, they go back to that very formulaic, like we want it 1 page, maybe a little more if you had a lot of significant experience before you got to law school, but we really want you to keep it to 1 page. But when I was applying to law school, I, after doing research, realized oh, no. That is not what a law school application resume should look like at all. So I think that that's so important to note, because you might be cutting out something that would really, really help law schools see who you are and what have you done. And so that's great advice. I didn't know that I wanted to be a lawyer when I was in undergrad. So as Barbara said, I graduated from the School of Management at UTD. And so I thought I wanted to go have a long career in advertising. Well, the recession told me different. and that's when I decided to go back to law school. But I was one of the people that, when I was an alum, I didn't realize you could go seek out a pre-law advisor. And so I didn't actually come across Barbara until much later, after I had already been through law school and come back to UTD to see what was going on there. And then I discovered, we have a pre-law advising office, and it's got tons of resources that I should have utilized when I was going through the process. And I would have probably felt way better about it than I did when I was going through it. So I think that that's amazing advice that you're offering. And, and I think what I was always floored about is that all of it is free. Well, I mean, it's part of, what you paid for as to be a member of that university. But I think, so many students fall into these traps of spending all this extra money when they're applying to law schools. You spend all this money on test prep. You spend all this money on, possibly application prep. Some people will go and pay law school admissions consultants or whatever it is, when there's so much that your pre-law advisor can offer you. If you just go and seek them out. So I love that you're on here talking about this topic, because it's just something that I didn't really understand when I was going through.
And I think that also now my experience is that those of us who are pre-law advisors have a strong sense of it, as a profession, and not merely for our students at our school, but providing it as a resource through our, pre-law advisors organization to all students. At the forums, at the LSAC forums, we pre-law advisors volunteer to give pre-law advice on those days. So at the law school forums that are going to be online, there's going to be a little, avatar room that you go to that is pre-law advice, and me and other pre-law advisors from different schools will be in there. So students will be able to talk to us and interact with us and ask us questions at those forums, regardless of whether you're one of our students or not. You're all our students. And it's interesting, I'm thinking about, the application piece, including the personal statement, the resume, the letters of recommendation. Dave Farnham, who's the Deputy Dean of Admissions at the University of Texas, so, top law school. And he said, to me, all of the pieces of the application are just different pieces of the puzzle. And so you have to make sure you don't have redundancies in it. Take advantage of every different piece of the puzzle to tell something different about you. So your resume tells all of these different things about you. Your personal statement tells different things about you. Your letters of recommendation tell different things about you. And then, of course, your transcript, what classes you took in your major and so forth, is another piece of the puzzle. And so all of these things together, the admissions folks are going to look at and try to figure out who you are as a person based on all of those pieces of the puzzle. And oh yes, Dave is another one who says, get that application in early, because he told me, when it's November and applications are coming in and I'm looking at my computer and I got my cup of coffee and I'm really trying very hard to see who is this person and what are they like. And he says, by the time it gets to February, it's not like that anymore. You're just getting waves of stuff that's coming in and you're kind of scanning through it really fast. You want to be the applicant that's getting there when Dave is still new and fresh and happy and trying to figure out who you are as a person. And so I think that's another thing, to feel that sense of urgency to get your application in early.
I love that piece of insight of what you can offer, because you are interacting with the law school admissions folks all the time. I think that oftentimes applicants, we feel like it's sort of a black box, like what in the world goes on in a law school admissions office? And it's hard for us to get information, but I know the interactions between all the OPLAs and the law schools are so much closer. And, one of the things that I didn't realize as an applicant is that the pre-law advisors, they're more on your side, the applicant's side, and then the law schools, they're objectively looking at you, but the pre-law advisors are in the best position to help you learn how to advocate for yourself. And I think that that's a really unique thing that I didn't know at all. And as I start interacting more with all the OPLAs and law schools and realizing that this world is much smaller than you think, you realize that it is hard for a lot of people on the outside to get information from the law schools about what's happening right now. And, the pre-law advisors are involved in that conversation. So if you're wondering what in the world is happening in this cycle, how is the pandemic impacting this cycle, next cycle, whatever, your pre-law advisor is going to be in a much better position to get that information than you. So you may want to go seek out a pre-law advisor, especially during times when the admission cycle is just very different than it used to be. And I often tell students this, I'm like, listen, as a lawyer, I can give you all sorts of advice about what it's like to actually be a lawyer. What I can't tell you is what is law school like right now today. I graduated 5 years ago. It's a different game now than it was then. And for lawyers that you're talking to who are even more experienced than I am, who are 10 years, 20 years out, it's been a way different change for them. So I think it's really important to hear how things are happening right now, especially because COVID has impacted the admission cycle so much. I mean, I took the Lsat on paper. I didn't take it as a digital Lsat, and I definitely didn't take it as the at-home Lsat Flex version, right? So there's so many changes in law school admissions now that I love what you're doing, Barbara, and I think that what pre-law advisors offer is just a very important service, because while lawyers can, you'll find that some of your worst admissions advice comes from lawyers. I'm not going to lie. Like
no kidding.
We can definitely tell you about what it's like to be, day in and day out, what our responsibilities are like, and what's it like to go and practice law. But we cannot tell you what's happening boots on the ground right now at the admissions stage, which is probably the most important thing for you. So definitely, network with lawyers to learn about what it's like to be an actual lawyer, to see if you even want to pursue law school. But once you've pulled that trigger and decided, yes, I'm going to be applying to law school, go educate yourself by talking to a pre-law advisor, and learn what is the world you're about to get into. Like, there is no substitute for talking to them. You can't go talk to your parents. You can't go talk to a lawyer. Like, we're not going to give you the best advice about admissions. These folks who do it day in, day out, and are involved in this world will give you that best advice.
Two things I want to say about that. The first one is lawyers, and I'm one, so I can say it. A lawyer's experience with applications is limited to one, and that's
yes,
their own.
Exactly. Our own.
And I went back and looked at my personal statement at one point in time. It amazed me that I found it, and it was terrible. I just thought, God, how did I get into SMU? Because this is just the worst.
I know. I went back and looked at my application, and I just cringed. How did this happen?
and so that, my theme number one, there's just no reason to go it alone, especially these days when there are people out there who are really willing to help you. And like I say, from that altruistic perspective of the better lawyers we get in going to law school, the better our world can be on the other side. And so I really want, that's kind of my drive at this point in time. And the more grim things get, the more kind of determined that I get that all of you are going to be the people who save the world for me. The second thing, though, is I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the financial aspect of it, because one of the things that is driving people away from law school is how expensive it is. So for me as a pre-law advisor, it's not about the best law school you can get into. It's about the best law school you can afford. And so part of my role as a pre-law advisor is to tell you, based on, your LSAT score, your GPA, and your overall application, I think you should apply to schools where your numbers are just at or above their medians. And that is where you have the best opportunity to get money from the law schools. And so you want to apply to a number of schools. And of course, you always want that reach, that dream school. But hopefully you're going to be getting in acceptances. You're going to get the letter that says, congratulations, you've been accepted. And here's how much money we're willing to give you. And all of the financial assistance is merit-based. And so law schools are going to try to lure you in by how much tuition assistance they can give you. 25%, 50%, the coveted full ride. And so you want to gear your applications towards that. And then there really is kind of a negotiation process of, you can communicate with a law school and say, you're really still my first choice, but X school is giving me this amount of money. If you could just kick in a little bit more money, then I would come to your law school. What's the worst thing that can happen? They say, no, this is our offer. A lot of the law schools are starting to have reconsideration forms. They found so many students, on advice of their pre-law advisors, negotiating that they just put in a form that says, okay, if you want us to reconsider, fill out this form, tell us where else you've been admitted and how much money they're giving you, and then we'll reconsider, our financial assistance. It's funny, we were at a panel with some admissions folks, and they were telling us to please tell your students that we don't like them negotiating about the money, and don't do that. And all of us kind of looked at each other, and I said, I'm sorry, but you're saying that you don't want future lawyers who are willing to communicate with you and try to negotiate with you? I'm sorry, but that's not my students. I'm going to tell them, you try to negotiate yourself a deal, because that's what lawyers do.
Yeah, I'm sure the law schools don't want you to negotiate so they can get the most
of course, yeah.
you. But
so,
yeah, absolutely.
I think that's the last step for pre-law advisors is once you start getting admissions decisions in to help you decide where it is you want to go and about the cost. There's a great organization called Access Lex, and I don't know, Angie probably has their website, and they are fantastic. They're a nonprofit, and their mission is to assist students who are financing their legal education, to talk to you about the various types of loans that are available, to assure that you don't borrow more than you're going to be able, here's our great business school, my corporate attorney view. You want to make sure whatever amount of money you borrow for law school, that the type of job you're going to get on the other side is one where you can service the debt. And so the numbers get kind of astronomical. And I just look at it and think, I can't recommend you, borrowing that amount of money for law school.
Access Lex actually, that you were talking about, Access Lex actually has a financial advisor hotline that you can call them and, get tailored advice about, this is where I am. Maybe you're going to law school as a second career and you're thinking about having to not only stop working, but you've got a family to support, and what are all the things that you're going to do to make that happen? And they will give you tailored advice, and it's a free hotline. So
it's
definitely
fantastic.
Use all of their resources. Yeah. I'm blown away by them. I think
I would say First Start is on their website. They have a webinar called Financing Your Legal Education. And it's just so fantastic because it tells you about the different types of federal loans and how much you can borrow and what the interest rates are like. They tell you the different expenses that you should consider, what the cost of attendance really is as compared to the cost of attendance that the law schools tell you. Here's a great little tip too. When you are considering different law schools, every law school has to make a report to the ABA of certain financial and admissions information. And so when you go to any law school's website, you can just search on there for ABA report, ABA 509, it's the 509 report, and you will have then information in the same format that you can compare for every law school you might be interested in. And it tells, all of the percentiles for LSAT scores and GPAs. It tells breakdowns by ethnicity of, the different, it will tell you the percentage of applicants who are accepted, and from that, the percentage that actually matriculate to that school. I mean, it's just a wealth of information. But tuition cost what they say their cost of attendance is. And so you can start to get some feel about, how much that school might actually cost you.
Well, not only that, it tells you the percentage of people receiving financial aid and what's the 25th percentile and 75th percentile in scholarships and merit-based aid that's offered. So you can tell, did this school really offer me a good deal or did they offer me a bad deal?
Yeah.
If it's 75% of their students are on some form of scholarship and 50% of them are on full rides and you're not getting a full ride, you should question why is that.
Right.
So you can
Then
use
it's
that.
time for your negotiation.
Yeah, so you can use that in your negotiation, and I think that's the reality check that happens when people are looking at T14 schools and they realize so few people are actually getting financial aid, and if they do get financial aid or merit-based scholarships, it's such a low number that they're like, wow, there's actually a lot of people who are paying full cost of attendance, which is insane at those schools. I mean, you're looking at some of those schools, it's over $300,000 for the 3 years. So that's a life-changing amount of debt.
I can't, I mean, even for the big names, I just don't think I can ever recommend borrowing $300,000 to go to law school. I mean, that's against every fiber of my being. And I think it's important when I say, that it's, the best law school you can afford. There are a lot of great law schools out there that are not in the top 20 or even the top 50. And I think it's important. It's one of those myths that I keep hearing. My students will come to me and say, well, I understand that where you go to law school is like the most important thing. And it's like, no, it really isn't. The most important aspects are, do you have some area of specialization that it is that you want to study? Although law schools do not specialize to the greatest extent. So if what you say to me is, I want to be a corporate attorney, you can go to, every law school is going to prepare you. Your whole first year is contracts and torts and real property and the things that, prepare you for that kind of broad-based legal practice. But if you're like Angie and your thought is, I want to be an intellectual property attorney, then I will say, okay, there are particular schools that do have not just courses, but clinic programs and externships that will help you. Environmental law is an area like that. I have a lot of expatriates from pre-health at UTD, come in and their parents want them to be doctors and they get into chemistry and say, no, this isn't what I want to do, but they're still interested in the health field. Well, health law is a specialized kind of field that there are certain schools that are best to go to for that. So that's where your research about your law schools. Law is also a very regional thing as far as connections go. So where it is you want to end up, one of the first questions for where I am is, okay, is your idea for your future that you want to stay in Texas or you want to get the hell out of Texas? Because if you want to stay in Texas, there are certain schools that are always going to have alumni in every law firm. So a school like Texas Tech in Lubbock is not known nationally, but there are certainly Texas Tech alumni all over in the different law firms in Texas. So know your region, know where it is, where you are, and where it is you think you want to end up when you graduate from law school. Because making those kind of regional connections with alumni and businesses is very important.
I completely agree. I think I'd like to just open it up to the Q&A for the last few minutes.
Yeah.
So if folks have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box or just unmute yourselves and get on video and ask us live. We won't bite, we promise. So go ahead and ask away. So if you were to give somebody advice for this next cycle, what would your advice be?
Make sure that you're thinking about the Lsat and that you're ready to get prepared for it by October would be first and foremost if you're thinking about this next cycle. There's free Lsat prep online now. You can go to Khan Academy and they have a great system. You do a diagnostic and then you can say, I want to do this 3 times a week, 2 hours a time, and it will give you, lessons that you can do. Then after you've gotten the basics down about the 3 different types of questions, then you want to get into a mode where you're doing practice tests. so that when it comes to getting right up to the point of taking the LSAT, that you've done practice test, practice test, practice test. You want to be in the position where you, when you sit down to take the test, that you've practiced enough that it takes away a lot of your stress.
Have you seen any common pitfalls between people taking the LSAT Flex and the digital LSAT? Do you have any advice?
Right now the big pitfalls with the LSAT Flex is your technology going to work through the whole thing. I had a student who got so prepared. She was, had set it up to take the test at her father's office because she knew that there was high connectivity there. She had been there and practiced a couple of times and everything was great. And then for some reason during the test, it just kept cutting out. And I think that's the terrifying part, is not knowing if you're in a place at home or nearby where, everything is technologically going to happen. And that's nerve-wracking.
Wow. So Kai is asking, she said she's going to be a freshman at UTD in political science. And she wants to be a patent lawyer. And she knows, or I'm not sure if Kai is a he or she actually, but they know that they have to take the patent bar exam. So how do you recommend studying for both the bar exam when requirements are met and the LS? Should you study for the patent bar and the LSAT at the same time, is I think what.
No.
Yeah.
I'm going to defer to Angie on the patent bar question, but it's really kind of two different pathways, because going to and you're way ahead of yourself. You should be thinking about, when am I going to prepare for the LSAT, and after that. The unusual thing about the patent bar, just for everyone, edification, is that you can take the patent bar without a law license. And so there are people who become patent examiners prior to or without ever really going to law school. And so
or patent agents.
Patent agents.
Patent examiners, you can work for the PTO. Patent agents, you're working for a private firm helping them draft patents.
Right. And so the lawyers that I have known that become patent lawyers, their big focus is on your undergraduate degree, in majoring in something where you're getting some kind of technological background that's going to be valuable to you as you become a patent attorney. And so your choice to be a political science major is an interesting one, because that is more geared towards, like myself, my degrees are in political science, and it was more based on my interest in policy and how the courts and the law impact, a broad base of policy. Whereas, like I say, the patent lawyers that I know basically were computer science, electrical engineering majors.
Well, and the reason for that is, in order to qualify to sit for the patent bar, you have to have a certain number of credits in sciences. So you cannot just decide today that you're just going to go sit for the patent bar without having taken all those courses. So if you are a political science major, you should think about double majoring in a science, or at least taking enough courses in a science where you can sit for the patent bar.
And then I would also say that I think the field of intellectual property that Angie went into, the trademarks and copyrights, is much more interesting than patent law, because it's more creative, is what I think. It's helping to protect intellectual property that people have utilized their ideas. I mean, if you think about trademarks, we're thinking about protecting the trade dress of things like Apple and Google and Under Armour, where Angie interned at a point. So what I would say as a freshman, well, first of all, make an appointment and let's talk about it offline. Barbara.kirby@utdallas.edu. And since you're one of my peoples, we can explore different areas of law that you're interested in and, kind of discuss what maybe the best major is for you as an undergraduate.
Awesome. Well, I know it's right at 1 o'clock, and I know you have an appointment after this, Barbara, so I'll let you.
Not real quickly. I have till 1:30, so if there are any more questions, we can certainly take them.
Oh, okay. If anybody else has any more questions, feel free to chime in. Kai, I also wanted to mention, okay, so most of the people that I knew, the earliest that they took the patent bar, if they weren't an examining or an agent before law school, most people take it in their second year of law school. So you would take the Lsat, you would apply to law school, get accepted, get into law school, do everything. And then the earliest that a lot of people took it was they would study and take it in their second year so that they would have it before they went to apply for jobs, because then they would be eligible for all those jobs. So I think there's many, many different times that you can take the patent bar, but I personally wouldn't try to do it before the Lsat unless you want to work for a firm as a patent agent or a scientific advisor. Scientific advisors can also help with drafting patents, and if you have more questions about those, feel free to reach out to me. I was, as Barbara said, a trademark and copyright lawyer, but intellectual property encompasses a very big umbrella of things. So it involves patents, trademark, copyright, trade secret. And so I do know a ton of other patent lawyers if you want to connect to one, and I'm happy to do that. But just, that's a very, very different world than most other practice areas. The patent bar is the only practice-specific bar I know of where you really have to take another bar exam. There's definitely other practice areas like tax where you might want to go and get an LLM, or you might want to do certain things to make you, you might want to go become a CPA or something like that if you want to go into those practice areas. But for the most part, most specialty areas will not require an additional exam or certification unless you want certain credentials, extra credentials. So just to clarify all that, not everybody has to take the patent bar, but it is the only other, bar that I know of that people have to take if you want to prosecute patents. So yeah, just if anybody else has more questions, feel free to chime in, but not. It's been wonderful chatting with you all today, and I will see you all next week. And I hope you all are staying safe and happy and healthy during the COVID pandemic. And if you ever have anything that you need, please reach out. Thank you so much, Barbara.
Thank you to everyone for being on here. And you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me at UT Dallas/prelaw. So, if you come up with any questions or you want to send me an email, I'd be happy to answer.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Barbara.
Thank you, Angie. Talk to you soon.
Bye.